must say that over the past few years, one of the more disturbing trends I've noticed is the outright refusal of people to say precisely what they mean. I don't mean the way used car salesmen sell cars without fully disclosing their issues. I mean the way words are intentionally snuck in and out of language in the hope that most people won't notice the game of linguistic three-card Monte happening right in front of their eyes. Now, you may think I'm referring to those in power using words and then their definitions suddenly changing overnight to meet the whims of institutional demand, but I'm not. I'm referring to people who use words interchangeably with those more commonly accepted, and then pretending that they have the same meaning. Like you ordered a Coke, but they only have Pepsi, when in reality the difference is more like Coke and antifreeze. The effect this has is that over time, enough people associate the bad idea with the good, causing a gradual shift in the Overton window, so the idea becomes more accepted. And I can think of no better example of this than the word equity. It's like equality, right? I mean, they're practically the same word minus one syllable, so it's just faster and more efficient to use it. Well, you could say the same for the word therapist, and that's not where the analogy stops becoming apt. It's been fascinating to watch equity slip into common parlance like a kid sneaking out of a convenience store with firecrackers stuffed in his pocket. And like a child caught in the act, it will immediately become indignant, insisting, "I didn't do anything," even though you literally just saw what it did. It will play dumb, like it has no idea why you would accuse it of doing wrong. Huh? I'm good. I'm just the same as equality. You aren't making any sense. We're exactly the same. So let's be clear. Let's put aside the semantics, the gaslighting, the shell games, and clearly define what is equality and what is equity. So you hear people talk about the Industrial Revolution, a time in which Western Europe exploded in terms of population, productivity, and innovation, which in turn caused an outward rippling effect that changed the standard of living for most of the globe for the better. But have you ever considered why this happened? Why in Europe of all places, where they aren't exactly swimming in resources compared to the other parts of the world? Now, I know you may have been taught that it's because Europeans are an evil people who exploited indigenous peoples like no other, but just for a moment, put aside the hateful brain slug that your college professor attached to you and pay attention. To understand why this happened in Europe, you need to go back a ways before the Industrial Revolution, to a time in which legal matters were decided not by their circumstances, but by who you were. When your tribe, family name, position, and status were what counted when it came to disputes. Then, Western Europe adopted the rule of law, where it didn't matter who you were, so much as what had transpired, and everyone had approximately the same protections under the law. Now, I can already hear some of you laugh at what a crock that is, because some groups weren't treated equally somewhere and sometime. I'll get to you in just a moment, so just shut up for a second and let me finish my thought. So people were treated more equally in Western Europe than anywhere else in the world. If someone stole from you and they were the brother of some tribal leader or an archduke, you didn't have to worry about being thrown into prison for defaming someone who actually matters. Now, since Western Europe was the fairest society on the planet, guess where people the world over wanted to go to live, to work, to do business, to innovate, and to help the society prosper? Guess where the most skilled, most creative, and hardest working people travel? Why, to Western Europe, the place where they can earn, trade, and build for themselves without worrying about local leaders and hierarchical bureaucracy robbing them and punishing their productivity. And over time, this framework of equality produced the explosion we call the Industrial Revolution. Now, as for the naysayers who insist that this equality didn't in fact produce equality, well, congratulations on pointing out the obvious fact that the single greatest innovation in the organization of mankind wasn't perfect. Your stunning observation is like that of a man walking up to a house made of bricks and saying, brick houses sometimes fall down. Only you aren't just saying that it's possible for a brick house to collapse, are you? You're implying that instead of having a house made of bricks, we should knock it down and let you build one made out of cotton candy, which is exactly what you will find in equity. Essentially, equity means that different people have different needs, particularly those from marginalized groups, and should thus be allocated different resources to account for the inequality. Okay, that's as much lip service as I'm going to pay to the charitable description that people use. Equity isn't equality. It means that instead of treating people the same, some groups should be treated differently. And if you think that sounds like bad news, the really bad news is that when I say that some groups are treated more favorably, it isn't and has never been the ones you're probably thinking of. It is never the people from low-income communities riddled with poverty that are given a helping hand. I don't care how many of these cartoons they make that show this. Equity is a tool for leverage, one that throughout history and in many different forms has been used to whip the desperately poor, the marginalized, and the rebellious into following orders, with promises of tackling inequality and constructing a better tomorrow. And once that leverage is used, the ones who wield it step on those groups to pull themselves up higher. Equity is used to justify $200,000 a year equity officers in companies and universities all over the country. While inner cities continue their free fall into the third world, equity has become a multi-billion-dollar a year industry with no intention of slowing down the unending machine of empty promises. And what do? Why, they advocate for equity. Seminars, workshops, DEI statements are commonplace everywhere. A massive industry predicated on talking about helping people with little evidence to justify that they are even interested, let alone capable of doing that. And the part that drives me crazy is that none of this is even a secret. It's spelled out clear as crystal for anyone to read for themselves. Many of the foundational texts on critical theory explicitly state that the workers' revolution really didn't pan out the way Marx hypothesized, and so CT became the plan B, where a collective of groups othered by Western civilization could serve the same purpose, to dismantle capitalism. So no, equity and equality are not the same, and anyone who tries to tell you any differently is a liar. You aren't a high-minded intellectual whose theory is simply too complex for the rest of us to understand. You're just a liar. But stop fucking lying to us and just be honest about what you are. A self-serving parasite who LARPs as a caring, compassionate person. You don't want to help this group or that group or anyone. You just want power, and you will go to any length to attain it.